Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting. Before we begin tonight's meeting, let us take a moment to recognize this week is National Volunteer Week. This year's theme is empathy in action. Empathy is a quality that can help people relate to one another and build awareness around different experiences. This human connection is at the heart of healthier individuals and stronger communities. We recognize and celebrate the many generous volunteers in Wilmot that make our community a wonderful place to live. To the thousands of volunteers who have put their hearts into strengthening our township, helping those in need, our community would not be the same without you. This week and every week, we thank you. I'll ask Councillor Gerber to read the Territorial Acknowledgement, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Armstrong. We have gathered virtually in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dishers One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before settlers arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant in the First Nations, Inuit and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, sir. There is an addition to the agenda. I'll ask the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
Sorry, I'm just having a small technical difficulty at the moment. My apologies. If the deputy clerk is available, if she can read it, she has it.
Yeah, she's handy.
If she has the motion available.
Yeah, that a presentation from Kitchener Power Corporation regarding their annual report be added to the agenda under presentations as item 10.2.
Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? That is moved by Councillor Gordick, second by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now we have the adoption of the agenda. The deputy would read the recommendation, please.
That the agenda as presented for Monday, April 25th, 2022 be adopted.
The mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Sorry, I didn't hear. Seeing none. Minutes of the previous meeting. I'll ask the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
That the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as presented. Special council meeting Monday, April 4th, 2022, and regular council meeting Monday, April 11th, 2022.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? That is moved by Councillor Gerber, second by Councillor Fenning. Comments, questions, or omissions or corrections? Councillor Fenning.
The presentation given by Elizabeth Lepla, sorry, not Elizabeth, Linda Lepla, is incorrect in the minutes, and the clerk has been provided with the correct presentation in order to update the minutes.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, we will make that amendment.
Thank you. So noted. So vote as amended. All in favor? That is carried. So we have a presentation on the audited financial statements. So Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report and the attached statements summarize Wilmot's financial performance over the past fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021. In accordance with the Municipal Act, the auditor of a municipality must report to council their audited financial report at the conclusion of the annual audit. Graham Matthew Professional Corporation was retained by the township to prepare the 2021 audited financial statements. And at this point in time, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Mike Arndt. Mike was responsible for the audit this year once again, and is here to provide highlights of the audit and Wilmot's financial position. So over to you, Mike.
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mayor Armstrong, and thank you, Patrick, for that introduction. It's my pleasure to be with you again this evening to present the results of our audit of the 2021 financial statements of the township. And I'm once again very pleased to have a clean audit opinion to share with you tonight on the financial statements. This year, we were able to return on site to actually do the audit itself. So I'd like to thank staff for providing us with a safe environment to be able to do that. And it was nice to actually see real live people again as part of that audit. So we were able to sort of return to our regular schedule and complete the audit on course with its regular schedule. So I'd like to thank Patrick and his team in the finance department. Once again, they did a great job of having all the information we require to do the audit available and ready for us and provided to us, including preparation of the financial statements themselves and all the related note disclosures that go with them. So again, thank them for their efforts and their leadership again this year. Your finance department continues to be one that many municipalities would certainly be envious of. So our thanks to them again. We only had minor adjustments to the financial statements this year, and all of those were from a presentation point of view, so presentation for your external financial reporting purposes. And so as a council, what that really means is that you can be confident that the information, financial information that you get throughout the course of the year is accurate, it's timely, and it's reliable for your decision-making purposes. The township also, once again, has filed its financial information return with the province well in advance of the May 31st deadline. So that will ensure that you continue to receive your provincial funding uninterrupted throughout the course of 2022. Wilmot was the first municipality in the southwestern Ontario region to file its FIR for 2021. And as of late last week, Wilmot was one of 8 municipalities, last time I checked, in Ontario to have filed its FIR for 2021. So again, a very good reflection on the financial operations of the township. So turning now to the financial statements that you have before you, in addition to management's report on the statements, we present our audit opinion on the 2021 financial statements, which is a clean, or as we say, unmodified audit opinion, which means that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township and the results of your operations for the year ended December 31st, 2021. Now, as you know, the statements the financial statements themselves, they're presented in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which differ significantly from how you budget throughout the course of the year. So what I'd like to do is just focus on some of the highlights that you'll see in the financial statements and some of the key performance indicators for 2021. So the very first couple of pages in the statements is what is called the 6-year financial review. And what you'll see there is a fairly high-level summary that details a variety of different things for the past 6 years. Things like your total revenues, expenditures, tax arrears, staffing levels, long-term debt, fund balances, all those sorts of things. So this is a useful way to just have a bit of a snapshot of how things have progressed or developed or changed over the last 6 years. Getting into the statements themselves and detailed a little bit in the financial review as well, you'll notice your taxes receivable have declined by about 29% over last year, which is a significant improvement from what was really already a pretty good position. It's gotten that much better this year. So in other words, your tax arrears are lower, almost than they've ever have been in the past. You have your second lowest tax arrears on a per capita basis in the last 6 years as of the end of 2021. And that's all a result of collections. There's no write-offs or anything of that nature going through there. So excellent news there. Your net financial assets remain relatively stable with last year at 35.4 million compared to 35.7 million in 2020. And overall, your net financial assets have increased by about 12.2 million since 2014. So again, you've built a very solid and stable base, financial base for the future of the township. Your Kitchener Power Corporation investment continues to be a very strong performer. It increased by $528,000 this year. And over the last 5 years, that investment has provided the township with about $1.6 million in cash by way of dividends that it's paid to the township. So it's been a very, very good investment for you. This year, you invested just about $5.6 million into your tangible capital assets, your infrastructure within the township. And that adds to up to about 60 million that you've invested over the last 13 years into the development and maintenance of your capital assets and infrastructure. You continued as well this year with your staff continued with your asset management planning processes, which provide you with continue to provide you with more and more accurate information every year about the condition, the lifespan, and the replacement costs of your infrastructure assets, so that as a council you can properly budget or more accurately budget as best you can for the replacement and development of new capital assets within the township. For the 8th consecutive year, you remain debt-free as a township. Also an indicator of your financial strength that you've built over the last several years. And this year, your staffing complement increased by a net of only two staff people during 2021. So again, I think that's reflective of the fact that as a township, you continue to deliver your services in a responsible and efficient manner. So really that concludes my comments on the financial statements and the audit for 2021. Again, a very positive audit, a clean audit opinion on the statements. Again, I'd like to thank staff for their efforts, Sharon, Patrick, the staff in the finance department. They're excellent professionals to work with, and we appreciate their expertise and professionalism very much. And lastly, just as I conclude here, I know a term of council is starting to wind down here and come to a conclusion. I just wanted to thank council for the opportunity to be of service to the township during your last term. It's been a privilege for us, so thank you for that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the audit this year.
Councillor Hallman.
Thanks to the mayor. Mike, thank you so much for summarizing that for us. I think what is hard is when the amount of hours that go into preparing this for staff, for yourself, and then we get, you know, a 5-minute summary that the community kind of tunes into. It just kind of doesn't reflect on the you know, on how cumbersome this really is. So my appreciation to the township staff, to yourself, and thank you so much for highlighting those pieces that I was not aware of with where we are positioned in the province. It's just another example of how successful we are here in Wilmot. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Yes, you're right. You're right on with the amount of hours that your staff in particular put into this. They do a tremendous amount of work, not just for us, but throughout the course of the year, because this isn't something that can just be thrown together because the auditors are coming to visit. This is reflective of the hours throughout the course of the year. So absolutely.
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate the comments, and I know staff do, but we have to be careful because we know that some of them you know, we don't want to get them too swollen in the head. You know, we gotta try and keep them in check.
We do our best, Mayor Armstrong, when we're on site to see what we can do to do that for you. Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Mike. We really appreciate it. Okay. Have the, no further questions. We'll have the clerk read the recommendation, please.
That report COR 2022-16 regarding the 2021 audited financial statements be received for information purposes.
Thank you. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Fenning and Councillor Hallman. And I want to, I really want to thank staff for the great work that they do all year round from the finances. We give them a hard time, but despite that, they do an excellent job and always have. So thank you again, guys. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have a presentation from Kitchener Power Corp. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you once again, Mayor Armstrong. This report provides an overview regarding the 2021 annual report for Kitchener Power Corporation. It also seeks approval from Wilmot Council for the audited financial statements, support for the elective representatives to the board of directors, and appointment of auditors for the ensuing fiscal year. At this point in time, as always, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. James Phillips, Chair of KPC, and Mr. Jerry Van Oudegem, President and CEO, who will provide an overview of the annual report. So Jerry and Jem, the floor is yours.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Evening.
Welcome, Jerry. You can go ahead.
Okay, Jim, what's
James.
Yeah, I've been promoted, Mr. Mayor, so thank you very much. On behalf of the boards of Kitchener Power Corporation and Kitchener Wilmot Hydro Incorporated, I would certainly like to thank Council for time once again on your agenda this evening. Tonight, as you know, we are here to give you an overview of our operating year 2021, a very busy, memorable, and successful year. And certainly without further ado, then I'll turn things over to Jerry for our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mayor Armstrong, councillors, senior staff, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to present to you the 2021 annual report for Kitchener Wilmot Hydro. Next slide, please. So it's a milestone year for us. We are now serving over 100,000 customers, and very proud to do so. We added 1,027 new customers during the year. Our energy, overall energy consumption was slightly higher in 2021 compared to the previous year. Our peak demand was down slightly from the previous year, but more typical year. The temperatures were a bit more moderate in 21 than 2020, so hence the reduction. Next slide, please. So from a financial performance perspective, both our total revenue and total expenses were lower than the prior year. And that was primarily due to some legislated billing changes from the province to remove some of the global adjustment costs from the rate base to the tax base. There was also some adjustments to the residential rates early in the year last year due to COVID. So that reduced the total sales. Our distribution revenue, however, it was up slightly at $44.8 million. Operating expenses at 37.3, which were also up slightly. But our net income was an all-time high at 11.4 million. And, you know, Mike had mentioned it was a good year. Certainly it was. It's a bit of an anomaly in that we had a lot of our labor costs diverted to capital because of the new customer information system that I'll speak to a little bit more later. Next slide. So capital investments for the year amounted to $26.1 million compared to $25.9 million the year prior. That's made up of $11.4 million for internal capital, which are really system renewal projects. And those would include transformer station upgrades, pole line rebuilds, underground cable replacements to improve reliability. Other investments of $8.3 million would include IT, vehicles, buildings, tools, and equipment. And then the $6.4 million that's shown at the bottom there in the blue under billable capital are really customer-driven projects, servicing new subdivisions, relocating pole lines for road widenings, and other new services. Next slide. So already mentioned that our operating expense for the year was $37.3 million. Of that amount, $22.4 million is what we call controllable expenses. And that represents 60% of our total operating expenses. Other expenses for the year included conservation and demand management, or CDM, interest, property taxes and amortization, and income taxes, which was actually negative because of the large shred credit we received on our taxes in 2021 for the CIS project. Next slide. So those controllable costs equate to, on a cost per customer basis, to $224, or here, sorry, $219. So that is the third lowest controllable cost in the province. This is based on the 2020 OEB yearbook. Our actual controllable costs in 2021 were $224. So they went up about $4.50 per customer, but that was still below budget in terms of our overall costs. So you can see that you know, we're positioned very well with respect to controllable costs with other utilities in the province, and that really does help to keep our rates low. Next slide. So this is what how a bill breaks out for a typical residential customer, and the Ontario Energy Board defines that as someone who uses 700 kilowatt hours of electricity in a month. So you can see that 57% of the bill are for third-party energy charges. So that's the electricity you use. It's a pass-through for us. We buy it on behalf of our customers and sell it at the same rate. Other pass-through costs include the transmission costs you see at the top. That's another 80%. Of course, the taxes that we're billing on behalf of the province, and then regulatory charges are also a pass-through cost. So the distribution costs of your bill amount to $25.69 for a residential customer, and that's 20% of the total bill. So the total bill of $107.20 is after the Ontario electricity rebate that the provincial government discounts residential bills by, which it was about $18 or 17% of the total. Next slide. So how does our electricity costs or bill for a residential customer compare to others in the province? Well, we have the second lowest residential bill in the province at $107.20. And you can see some of the others here that are listed, other utilities. So certainly, you know, controlling our costs helps to pass along those savings to our customers. Next slide. A little bit about our reliability numbers for 2021. Again, they were very good in 2021 compared to previous years. On average, each customer on our system experienced less than one power outage, lasting approximately 34 minutes during the year. Now that excludes two major events that occurred in 2021, and that's as per the Ontario Energy Board guidelines around this. So we had a windstorm on June 29th and another one on December 11th that caused more widespread outages. But so did the others that are reporting. So certainly when you exclude those extreme events, you know, our results were very good in 2021. The main cause of the reliability of the outages, I guess, is equipment failures, which accounted for about 1/3 of the total power outages and affected about 31% of our customers. Submersible transformer failures, which are the ones that are below grade, continue to be a significant source of outages for us. And we're looking at some options to address those. Next slide. So these are some other service quality performance indicators that we track. There's actually a total of 10 in total, but these are 5 that are that we regularly report on. The standards, you can see the OEB minimum standard in the middle there is the standard that is set for us to meet, and we have exceeded that minimum standard in all cases. I will talk a little bit about the telephone accessibility one, which did go down in 2021 from 2020. And that's a direct result of the increased call volume that we experienced in due to the cutover to the new customer information system. So we had about, I guess, a 23% increase in call volume during that cutover time. And of course, it was a challenge for our staff to answer all those phone calls within 30 seconds. And certainly we expect that to improve again in 2022, but it was a real challenging period to answer all the phone calls. Because not only did we cut over to a new system, we also implemented a new bill format at that same time. Next slide. So the ongoing impact of COVID, and this is, a lot of this will be similar to what you are experiencing at the township as well. We continue to have a hybrid work from home, work from the office for office staff. And we adjusted that throughout the year. We're currently working 4 days a week from the office. Some of our crews are still reporting to remote locations so we can keep them separated. But really the most significant impact, ongoing impact from COVID-19 is the supply chain issues that we have been experiencing. And, you know, both in terms of the cost of purchases and materials and the delivery time for some of these purchases. In fact, we have a large truck that we ordered in December 2020 that we're still waiting for. We haven't received yet. And, you know, that will continue into the future. We're now ordering trucks for, you know, 2024 effectively now, hoping to get them in 2024. In terms of material prices, we've seen some significant increases as well. Transformer prices have increased anywhere from 40 to 60%. Wire and cable, same, 40 to 60%. And some of our underground pipe by over 100%. So, you know, it's been a real challenge to absorb some of these increases for sure. Next slide. We talked about our new customer information system, and after 2 years through a pandemic, I'm very proud of the dedicated and resilient team that we have that put this new system into service on September 27th. The new system's an Oracle customer care and billing system, and it replaces a 30-year-old legacy in-house solution that was developed by our own programmers. That has served us very well. It has reached end of life. Next slide. So a bit about the merger. There was a lot of effort in 2021 around this proposed merger. So after many months of study and due diligence, the 5 municipal shareholders of our holding companies approved proceeding with the merger of Kitchener, Wilmot Hydro and Waterloo North Hydro in December. A merger application was submitted to the Ontario Energy Board in January 31st, 2022, and we are currently working our way through that process. In fact, today, interrogatory responses were due to the Ontario Energy Board, and so those have now been filed today. We expect a decision, in early summer, and a possible closing date in Q3 of this year. In the meantime, we have established integration teams, and work has begun on some of the integration activities. And next slide. And finally, I would like to just take a minute to to talk a little bit about some of the community initiatives that we continue to pursue. We've made a number of donations, both corporate and employee donations, to a number of charities, local charities, as we have done in previous years. We continue to provide sponsorship support to both Centre and the Square, and for 2 student awards at Conestoga College. We provided in-kind support with the supply and ongoing, installation of some poles at the Wetlands Preserve, and also provided in-kind support for a better tent city by installing transformer and service to their new location just off of our Delta Ave. So you probably would have seen on social media some pictures of a pole and nesting platform that was installed on Friday in the preserve for an osprey platform. So certainly our employees are very proud to be able to participate in this project. And then finally, we continue to provide tree reforestation grants to the City of Kitchener and the Township of Wilmot. So I think that's it. Next slide. Normally, this is when, if we were meeting in person, we'd be presenting some checks. Those checks will be transferred through EFT, and hopefully, I believe the dividend amount's already been transferred, and the tree reforestation. If not, it will be this week as well. So thank you very much for allowing us the time to make this presentation today, and certainly the chair or I are available to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's a lot of good news there, despite what's been going on. We appreciate all the hard work of all your staff, and there has been a lot of work put in by yourself and Jim, and I know that our Director of Corporate Services has been involved in that merger as well. So we certainly do appreciate all the hard work you've all put in, and your staff as well. Councillor Hallman.
Thanks for the mayor. Thanks, Jerry and Jim. It was, I appreciate knowing the Better Tent City piece, the dignity that goes involved with the hydro. I thank you for that. And then obviously with the pieces for protecting nature and the wetlands, I really value that too. Jerry, during your presentation, you mentioned something that as an elected official a few weeks ago, I received many calls about a power outage, and you were talking about But there was some work going on with transformer that just piqued my interest because it was something that I was hearing a lot about. Do you mind elaborating a little bit further on what that looks like for the residents of our community?
In terms of the upgrades we're doing?
Yes.
Yeah. There are a number of many projects actually that we're working on. Some are pole line rebuilds in your community, and we've actually had crews stationed at the Baden transformer station for the last 2 years, and we found that very convenient because of all the work that we're doing in Wilmot Township to upgrade some of the pole lines. In the township area, it's much more convenient for the crews to report there and have them respond to. We're also doing some significant upgrades to our transformer station in Kitchener at Fisher-Holman Road and Ottawa Street South. We've been working there for the last couple of years as well, replacing some of the older protection systems and upgrading the control systems. And we're also now in the process of, we're just out for a request for proposal now to upgrade some large power transformers that at one of our transformer stations as well. And I'm a little worried about material prices these days. The price of copper and aluminum and steel are quite high. So, but we do long-term planning for replacement of our assets, and really it's about staying on track, just much like the township is doing. You have an asset management plan, and it's critical that we continue to replace each year those assets that are reaching end of life. So hopefully that answers your question.
It absolutely does. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. See no further questions. I'll ask the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
The report COR 2022-20 be received for information purposes, and further that the audited financial statements of Kitchener Power Corporation for the year ended December 31st, 2021, as audited by KPMG LLP, as presented, are hereby received, and further that Mr. James Phillips, Ms. Rosa Lupo, and during their tenure, Mayor Barry Verbanovic, Mayor Les Armstrong, Mr. Bill Ionides, Ms. Kelly Galloway Seelock, and President and CAO, Mr. Jerry Van Uyen, be hereby elected directors of Kitchener Power Corporation for a one-year term or until they otherwise cease to be a director of the corporation, and that KPMG LLP be hereby appointed as auditors of Kitchener Power Corporation for the ensuing fiscal year, and the directors are authorized to set their remuneration.
Thank you. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Fanning, second by Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Council. On a personal note, Mr. Mayor, I might just say go Firebirds.
Well, I'm happy to report they've already earned me a block of cheese from the mayor of East Star Tavistock. So we'll see how things go now. So take care. So we're now into our, excuse me, we are now into the consent agenda. If members of council have any questions and want to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now, as we will not take questions on consent items unless the items are requested to be removed to the regular agenda. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
The report numbers COR 2022-18, COR 2022-17, PWE 2022-13, PWE 2022-14, and PWE 2022-15 be approved.
That is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fenning, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So our next item is from Corporate Services, Statement of Operations, and Mr. Romney.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report outlines the first quarter statements of operations. As a whole, the net impact on the general levy remained relatively the same over the first quarter at 22.5% compared to 21.3% in 2021. As noted in the report, particularly at the Wilmot Rec Complex, with the gradual reopenings that occurred over the first quarter, revenues and expenses appear to be on target with budget expectations. Future quarterly updates will outline any significant deviations should they arise. So attached to the statements, attached to the report, you'll find the statements with the various note references on all the other operating budget lines in there. So staff are here to answer any questions, and thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Romney? I'm sure I'll survive, but forgive me. And I see no questions. Ask the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
First of all, Gesundheit, Mayor Armstrong. The report COR 2022-19, Statement of Operations as of March 31st, 2022, as prepared by the Manager of Finance / Deputy Treasurer, be received for information purposes.
Thank you. And that is moved by Councillor Gordick and Councillor Fenning. No questions? Okay. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is Legal Services, return to in-person council meetings. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Staff report ILS 2022-15 provides council with a framework around returning to in-person council meetings as the first phase of a two-phased approach to responding to the province lifting the orders and recommendations concerning the pandemic. The report outlines phase one at a high level, how sitting in the chambers could be approached, how delegations would address council only in chambers, and the continuation of live streaming and recording council meetings. Phase two would include the hybrid model where council staff and the public may participate electronically or in person. The staff report addresses technological capacity and regulatory allowances. In other words, it advises council on what can be done if there is a desire to return to in-person meetings. What the report does not address is the constant evolution of the pandemic as numbers rise and fall on a daily basis, and the personal comfort levels of those involved. What council is being asked to consider is if they, staff, and the public should return to meeting in person only on May 16th, in person only at a future date, wait until hybrid meetings can be implemented, or provide other direction. By endorsing the report, staff would proceed with the two-phased approach as outlined. However, council is free to amend the motion as they deem appropriate to direct staff going forward concerning in-person and hybrid meetings. Thank you, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Comments or questions? Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. I am personally not comfortable with returning back on May 16th. I've done a lot of reflecting on this. We're in a sixth wave. I know that we're still battling this illness, and what I bring to the room is I come from a family with 3 kids who are exposed daily at school. Although we have been fortunate enough to not have COVID in our house, 1 in 4 Canadians have had it and are working on having it again. So I don't like that risk that I bring to the room, and also I care for an elderly person in my family, and I don't like the risk that I take back to them. So I would prefer that the intricate layers that are involved with this that, as know that we have more limited council meetings coming in the summer. So I would support waiting until we are revisiting this, I should say, until we are in the fall where both systems are in place. But for now, I do not support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So I agree with Councillor Hallman for those particular issues. The other one as well is there's an extra part for me, as well as the commitment that we have to our community, is that we have been doing hybrid meetings, or whatever they're called, being that they have Zoom and we have our delegations being able to participate for the sake of 3 meetings, to sort of cut people off to attend those meetings virtually or not virtually, or having to show up. And then our council chambers aren't big enough, I feel, to be socially distant from people for those delegations to arrive. As Councillor Hallman has said, we're through a 6th wave. Schools are closing because they don't have enough teachers. Kids are going back and forth and reinfecting people. So I personally don't agree, but for me, the biggest part of it is not just the safety aspect, but it is the idea that for the sake of 3 meetings, the people that have been participating, and we've been able to get our residents to participate through the pandemic, I'd like to see that continue. And if we have to wait till September in order to provide them with the technology to be able to do that, I'd be more comfortable with that than cutting our residents off for the sake of 3 meetings. So I'm not in favor of this particular motion.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. I think we are supposed to have a mover and a seconder before we start debating the issue. So point of order.
Perfect. You can go ahead. Whoever wants to move in second. Councillor
me.
Fanning, Councillor Fisher, go ahead.
Pardon me, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Properly, we would first of all be reading the motion. So if I may.
You may go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Quite simply, that report number ILS 2022-15 be endorsed.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder. So we shall continue. Councillor Fanning.
So looking at the numbers and looking at how many businesses have been impacted by significant percentages of their workforce being infected and having service levels impacted, I feel that this is not the right time, albeit this is proposing to begin 3 weeks from now. I don't believe, given the state that we're at right now, and as the clerk noted, changes and fluctuations nearly daily. I don't believe that going back to a full in-person model is the right decision. If we had the technology in place to go to hybrid, I would be very happy to return to chambers. But I feel that the introduction of members of the public into that space, where that's a fairly wide and uncontrolled number of people sharing the same airspace, I don't think that's a wise decision. I wouldn't want to expose our staff to that risk, and I certainly wouldn't want to expose any of my colleagues on council to that level either. I do think that the hybrid model will provide us with a good level of, at least for me, I will feel comfortable that we're balancing, being in chambers and sort of resuming the work in a more normal fashion, while continuing to enable our residents to have the level of access that they have enjoyed by being able to delegate remotely. So I am not in favor of accepting this report as is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, I'm going to agree with my three colleagues as well. The numbers to me are just a little too high to start doing this. And I don't know, I think we're setting an example for the citizens as well. We're being very careful about it. And I don't see a rush to jump right into it just at this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Pardon me? Oh,
Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, probably the thing that I found sort of odd about the report was, I know, for example, in education, right, the move is from virtual to hybrid to in-person. And I think too, from a public, just from an access point of view, that the hybrid model, if we were moving to that, I think that would be the direction to go. It seems odd to go virtual in person and have this gap where you have to be there, and then to go back to a hybrid model. So I would be in favor of waiting for the hybrid model. I mean, schools are open and functioning. I mean, there was 1,200 people at the Firebirds game the other night. I mean, certainly people are gathering again, so I don't want people to think we're not in favor of gathering again. But I think the idea of making sure that that every person is in a position to participate in the meeting, and my fear would be that if during this in person, whatever that looks like in between, that there's certainly the opportunity for people either for reasons of for their own medical concerns, or even if they've tested positive or are symptomatic. And the other thing I wondered about, even about the in person, it talks about having the option of coming in virtually if you needed to. But to me, I don't think that's sort of on the table. So we could have staff or council members. I mean, in person implies that you're not zooming in. So I think we should wait until we have the capability of zooming in. And then if people are able to gather in person and are comfortable doing that, we can as council to start, and then begin to introduce other people. So I would encourage staff to continue to work on the hybrid model and the technology involved in that. And I know it's quite complex for us to be able to interact with people, not on our own screens, but rather through one central feed from the council chambers. So I look forward to that happening though.
Thank you. Ms. Middleholt.
thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So certainly staff was prepared for this being a possibility. And so what we would look at now procedurally, if somebody wants to make a motion to amend, I do have a something prepared. If it lets me. A moment. There we go. There we go. So thank you for your patience. So that the motion be amended as follows: the report ILS 2022-15 be received for information, and further, the council meetings return to council chambers when hybrid meeting technology has been implemented. So once the hybrid technology has been implemented, that would then mean that electronic participation by members of council would be permitted in accordance with procedural bylaw. Delegations would be able to present electronically. Additionally, staff and members of council, if they are symptomatic, or members of the household are symptomatic, then they would be able to attend virtually under those circumstances, of course, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just one other thing I noticed in the report, and I think this would hold true for the hybrid step that we're going to start first, or the in-person step, which we may indeed get to later. The idea of just using current seating. I know when we consider all the seating around the horseshoe, there's sort of seating that sometimes other staff will use, and sometimes, at one time, maybe a member of the media would have used. I would just maybe ask staff to also consider, is there a way to perhaps, just slightly enlarge the seating around the horseshoe, maybe using more of that circle? That might make it more difficult to capture us on camera, I'm not sure. But that would allow for a bit more distancing in the chambers as well at such a time as we went back. Just a thought.
Thank you. I think that's something that can be worked out. I mean, at the regional horseshoe, they have spare seating. So when we were showing up at the region, they had some of the chairs blocked out so that there was creating the space. So I'm sure that we can come up with some kind of a thing, but that'll be in staff's hands. And by the looks of it, they're going to have lots of time to figure that out. Ms. Middleholtz, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. That doesn't necessarily need to be part of the motion. Staff is receiving that direction for us to look into during the time that implementing the hybrid technology.
Very good. Councillor Gardick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wanted to double check. I'm not sure if it's Ms. Middleholtz or Ms. Chambers. I just want to remove my hand. There we go. Within this motion, does there need to be any, as Councillor Gerber had mentioned, with regards to whether or not even staff or our council feel uncomfortable coming in, because we don't know when hybrid technology is available, where we will be with the pandemic, if the numbers continue to go up or if they come down. There's that level of safety and concern. As Councillor Hallman mentioned, she has children that could potentially be bringing COVID back because of how things are at the schools, or conversely, you know, somebody bringing it into chambers and not feeling comfortable to visit the person that she's taking care of. Does this bylaw need to incorporate within our bylaws whether or not council needs to attend as well, like the in-person part for council? Should this be included within that motion? Because it makes it appear as if we all should be coming back, and I'm just wanting some clarification if that should be incorporated.
Ms. Chambers, you want to jump in here?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I would suggest that staff review our procedures. I think we're going to have to look at, how we would address various procedures in relation to hybrid meetings, because it's not something that we've done before. So my feeling would be that we would bring those procedures back to council and share them prior to implementing the hybrid meeting, and certainly provide enough notice to council to let you know when we're ready and when we're planning to come back, so that we can have some discussion. We'll certainly take away the concerns that we've heard tonight in terms of distancing and incorporate those as well.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm looking at this and wondering if we need to add a piece about it coming back to council because, perhaps due to supply issues, there are no crystal balls to tell us where we're going to be when this technology is finally available to allow us to have hybrid meetings. So perhaps we should be coming back, and again, as CEO Chambers said, we're gonna have to look at the bylaw and see what needs to be. So maybe we need to put into this motion that when the technology, so instead of it being that council meetings return to council chambers when hybrid meeting technology has been implemented, change it to that staff bring a report with recommendations to council when the technology has been implemented. Because otherwise, I think the way it's written here, it's saying that automatically the minute the technology is ready, we're without having any idea what the situation is going to be, we're going to just be going back. So yeah, I think we need to take out that bit.
Okay. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, that was exactly my comment. It almost implied that as soon as the technology is available, we're coming back, but we should review what COVID looks like at the time, and whether we're ready to do that. So thanks, Councillor Fenning, for bringing that up.
Okay, Ms. Chambers, you wanted to jump in there?
I would just suggest that the final paragraph of that be amended to say that staff report back to council when hybrid meeting technology is ready. And if I could actually just amend that, so that staff report back to council on hybrid meeting procedures when the hybrid technology is ready.
Pardon me, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Did I capture that correctly? CEO Chambers?
That looks like it's captured that to me.
You, Mayor, I don't know if Councillor Hallman has a comment on that.
Yeah, Councillor Hallman?
Thank you, through the mayor. I appreciate my colleagues' edits to that, and I'm in support of this.
Okay.
So procedurally, then, if it is the desire of council, the next step would be for a motion for somebody to move this as an amending motion. It is seconded and then carried, approved, and then we vote again just on this part here, the actual motion itself.
Okay. So,
sir, what you would be asking for through your Mayor Chung is if you could ask for a mover on the
yes,
amending motion.
a mover and a second for the amending motion. Moved by Councillor Fenning, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried.
Okay, sir, and now if we can go back to the main motion.
Mhm.
That report ILS 2022-15 be received for information, and further that staff report back to council on hybrid meeting procedures when the technology is available.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder for this. So I'll call the question. Those in favor of the original?
Sorry, point of order. I think actually looking back at the report, the original recommendation was that report number ILS 2022-15 be endorsed. And so I believe that the motion that we are actually voting on now doesn't contain that language. And therefore we're going to have to move it as a separate motion, not an amendment. And we would need to defeat the original motion and move the second, the new motion.
Ms. Middleholtz?
Yes, thank you. The amending motion replaced the original motion, be amended as follows. So therefore we were replacing the original language with the new language. So it is correct now to move, it's already been moved and seconded, to vote on the amended motion, which was what I had read out.
Everybody understand? So we're having the motion to move on the amended motion. So We had a mover and a seconder for that, which were Councillor Fenning and Councillor Fisher, I believe. And all in favor of the amended motion? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. So the next item is from Parks and Facilities, and we have Ms. Jackson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong, members of council. So this report is a follow-up as requested by council on February 28th for staff report PFRS 2022-09, which was regarding the third ice pad and Parks Operations Center final report. And that report, when it was approved with an amended motion that requested a staff report advising on safety concerns related to the proximity of the Nature's Alpine facility. This report summarizes the information that staff obtained for the purposes of this report. In particular, a summary of a discussion with the lead architect on the original Wilmot Recreation Complex construction project, which states that there were no concerns raised during the rezoning or site selection process regarding the proximity to Nature's Alpine. Excuse me, I'm a little froggy tonight, like everyone else. Staff also met virtually with Nature's Alpine management staff, who provided further information confirming the safety of their operations, emergency planning and training programs that they have in place at their plant. And they will be delegating to this report this evening, I believe. Mr. Okrafka, Township Planner and Director of Development Services, confirmed that the concern that was raised about the 1,000 meter safety zone is not a factor in the land use compatibility guidelines Series D, as Nature's Alpine is a Class 2 industry with a 300 meter sphere of influence. And he is here this evening to answer what that means, because I'm not going to be able to. And this analysis was also supported by the Regional Planning Department. Also information that was provided by the Township Fire Chief to members of council regarding the nature of the chemicals in use, including anhydrous ammonia, was included as an appendix to this report. And just for reference, that is also a product that we use in the Arena Ice Refrigeration System plant and is used in most arena operations. So staff are here to answer any questions, and I'm not sure, Ms. Middleholtz, when the delegation will occur for this report. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So generally speaking, we would have the delegation address following your Ms. Jackson's highlight of the report. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, before commencing with hearing from delegations, I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Delegations will be allotted 7 minutes to speak. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manner, it will result in an immediate muting and removal from the meeting. And interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, hate speech, or defamatory comments. Now, and I'll call upon the delegations. Did you want to introduce them, Ms. Jackson, or we just invite Ms. Sierras and
sure.
Ms. Silicott?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong.
I see Sierra's trying to, or Carrie is trying to get in here, so. There's Carrie, welcome.
Good
You may
evening, Mayor
proceed.
Armstrong.
Go ahead, ladies.
Sure. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank you, Mayor Armstrong, and the members of council for giving us time on your agenda this evening. I'll speak on behalf of Nature's Alpine Solutions, give you an overview of our business, how safe we are with environmental health and safety, the procedures we have in place, and also how we help the community and the community we're involved in. So next slide, please. A little bit about Nature's Alpine Solutions. We were founded in 1946, and we were founded as a North American specialty liquids chemical manufacturer. Built on quality, integrity, and innovation, we pioneer precision liquid fertilizer formulated to meet the nutritional demands of crops and growing conditions on both sides of the border since 1946. Next slide. While some of our products that are stored at the New Hamburg plant are considered hazardous under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, none of those products are explosive. And we have developed an E2 plan in compliance with the law to chart a course of action in case of an accident that might cause a release. As part of developing that E2 plan, we have already worked with the neighbors to collect relevant contact information and let them know what to do in case of this kind of emergency. Next slide, please. Some preventative measures we have in place. In addition with complying with the law, we have taken affirmative steps in collaboration with the community to consider how to handle these types of emergencies. Nature's Alpine Solutions has a very high safety and environmental standard and works very closely with the local fire department in conducting regular exercises to maintain response times. The low risk of having a chemical release is due to the successful environmental health and safety programs, policies, and procedures that are followed daily at the location. At this time, the facility has not had a significant event that has affected the public safety. A little bit about what we do for the economic value in the area. Over half of the Alpine employees are local. We do try to shop local as much as possible. So we order lunches in from local restaurants. We order all office supplies from local businesses, and they try to utilize local entertainment as much as possible. We do support local charities, social groups, and recreations. We do donate to the 4-H clubs, Christmas food donations, participate in food drives, and just recently we donated to a local school to offer playground improvements. The Alpine business provided over 58 million liters of liquid fertilizer to the local community and surrounding areas in 2021. Just in conclusion, as you can see with what I've just mentioned, Nature's Alpine Solutions is committed to the environmental health and safety of our employees and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Open for questions.
Okay, Councillor Hallman.
Thank you both for taking time out of your evening to come and speak to us and to have the opportunity for the broader community to hear you and see this presentation. I'm sure it puts everyone's mind at ease, which was, I think, Councillor Gordick's intention with that exercise. So my deep thanks for your commitment and your commitment to community safety.
Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps the clerk to read the recommendation, please.
Yes, first of all, I would like to advise that a member of council has requested that this be a recorded vote.
Okay.
So the recommendation being that report PFRS 2022-15 third ice pad location follow-up report be received for information purposes.
We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Gordick, second by Councillor Fenning. You may begin the recorded vote.
Thank you. Councillor Ward. Councillor Gerber.
Councillor Gerber, you have a question?
Yes, I would have thought we'd still have a chance to ask questions other than of the delegation, perhaps.
Certainly.
All right, thanks. This would probably go to Director Okrafka, but through you, Mayor Armstrong. I know the proximity was also raised in a similar way, I think, during the potential MZO process. So I'm just wondering if we might be able to use the discussion and the evidence in the report that we have tonight. We know at some point there is residential growth occurring between New Hamburg and Baden, and at some point, probably in the far distant future, that will be in the area that the potential MZO was relevant to. So would that 300-meter influence then also be relative to residences in that area as well, to save us perhaps having to go through this again? Would that be the case, Mr. Okrafka?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Gerber, I would expect that we'll still go through that discussion. Certainly the developers will be proposing, but I can recall and remind council that when you dealt with the official plan in 2019, the setback between Nature's Alpine and the residential designation added to New Hamburg on what would currently be the Wilmot Woods property is exactly 300 meters. And again, for that same reason, that a sensitive use from Class 2 industry, the sphere of influence is 300 meters. And beyond that, is considered to have no impacts, although certainly within that public process, I certainly expect that concerns will be raised to ensure due diligence is followed, and the applicants will certainly provide additional information at that time in that respect.
Thank you.
Okay. See no further questions. So you may proceed with the vote, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Ward 1, A. Hallman, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Ward 2, C. Gordick, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Ward 3, B. Fisher, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Ward 4, J. Gerber, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Ward 4, J. Fenning, yay or nay?
Yay.
The yeas have it.
Thank you ever so much. That is carried. And again, I want to thank.
Just point of procedure there, the mayor didn't have his vote recorded.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. The mayor is not required to vote. If he announces that he is going to vote, even in a recorded vote, he is not required to vote. If he wishes to have it recorded that his intention, he may choose to do so.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
That is not my understanding of the Municipal Act. Can I get clarification on that?
It's our procedural bylaw does not record it. I'm not sure which section of the Municipal Act you're referring to. That specifically is addressing that, but
if it resolves any of your thoughts, my vote would have been a yay anyway. So, Ms. Chambers, you wish to comment?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I believe the mayor has to declare that he is voting prior to the vote being called as per our procedural bylaw. And so in this case, he did not do that.
through you, Mayor Armstrong, I concur with the CAO that the mayor is not required to vote unless they wish to comment on it. Section 246(1) of the Municipal Act, I'm just pulling it up now. Recorded vote. If a member present at a meeting at the time of vote requests immediate before or after taking the vote, that the vote be recorded. Each member present, except a member who is disqualified from voting by any act, shall announce his or her vote openly, and the clerk shall record each vote. That is the extent of it. with the exception of failure to vote. A failure to vote subsequent or under subsection 1 by a member who is present at the meeting at the time of the vote and who is qualified to vote shall be deemed to be a negative vote. The mayor, as stated, is not required to vote under our procedural bylaw. Therefore, it is not a negative vote unless he specifically states he is going to vote and says nay to the recorded vote.
Thank you. So that has been passed. So our next item is from Public Works. Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Mayor. We are pleased to present the Public Works and Engineering Core Infrastructure Technical Standards document this evening. This document focuses on design criteria and technical standards for engineering review and approvals, and is meant to inform engineering designers on completion of grading, servicing, and construction of core infrastructure, such as roads, sewers, water mains, and grading requirements and minimum testing for materials. It is intended to provide a more efficient design process for consultants by providing standards and specifications for them to follow, as well as to ensure long-term sustainability of newly constructed or replaced core infrastructure. In general, these new or replaced infrastructure project designs, drawings, and reports are to be prepared in accordance with the document such that reviews and acceptance and assumption for maintenance purposes can be undertaken in a manner that provides confidence to the design and construction industry, provides for efficient review, and ensures long-term sustainable principles are applied in the design and construction of infrastructure. Staff undertook an extensive direct consultation with the development and consulting community through the Home Builders Association, as this is the general practice in other area municipalities that have the same documentation for their own municipality. And we do so in a manner related to the Home Builders Association as a result of the technical nature of the document and the qualifications that are typically required to provide comments on infrastructure specifications and standards. There was not a broader community consultation undertaken, as that is not typically what these types of documents require, nor is that a standard practice within the area municipalities. Ultimately, these users, the development industry and consultants, will be the primary users under the enforcement of this document. So that really becomes the focus in terms of gaining feedback from them with their qualifications and direct involvement with the process of design and approvals. This consultation work was undertaken in 3 phases in collaboration with Woolwich to minimize the administrative impact to staff and to spread out the workload of these types of activities. Woolwich Council endorsed their staff report in March related to their similar document. Again, I will note that the document focuses on core public infrastructure and right-of-way design, study and acceptance requirements for capital or development projects, infrastructure projects related to infrastructure works. It does not include green building standards, as these are generally on private property and tie into building code processes, and is not the intent of this document. It includes stormwater management principles, but does not include low impact design principles at this time, as these are in consultation currently through the province and will be subject to further advancement over the next number of years. Its core principle is to outline standards governing engineering and infrastructure review, but does not seek to define new processes or establish different levels of service aside from existing provincial regulatory processes under separate acts. And so that, for example, would be the Municipal Class EA process, the Planning Act and the Drainage Act, just to name a few separate processes under regulatory, provincially regulated processes. In closing, Council should consider this document a working document that will be subject to change over time, as there will be changes in best practice. There will be advancement in technology, among many other potential opportunities for change over time. As such, we should expect that there will be administrative amendments and maintenance updates to the document over time, and specifically over the next year, as we hopefully move towards utilizing this document in our day-to-day activity of approval process. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of staff in developing this, in particular Brian Bishop, who has been instrumental since his time coming to Wilmot a few years ago and getting this not only the document off the ground, but working with Woolwich to make it a more collaborative process. And obviously being the driver of this work, taking hold of the direct consultation with the Home Builders Association and with the members of that the industry for feedback has been a quite an extensive workload. And we're certainly pleased to present this to council this evening for endorsement so that we can move forward with utilizing it. Brian and I are both here this evening to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should have the clerk read the recommendation, get a mover and seconder before we entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you. The report PWE 2022-19 Infrastructure Standards and Specifications ISS Manual for Public Works and Engineering be received for information, and further that the Infrastructure Standards and Specifications Manual as detailed in report PWE 2022-19 dated April 25th, 2022 be endorsed. And further, that the following actions with respect to the Infrastructure Standards and Specifications Manual will be taken. 1, staff be directed to utilize the Infrastructure Standards and Specifications Manual in the review of municipal consents, development, engineering applications, and approval and design of capital infrastructure projects. 2, staff are provided authority to update the Infrastructure Standards and Specifications Manual regularly to ensure it remains current with standards and township requirements.
Thank you. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Gerber, second by Councillor Gordick. Okay, Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Thank you, Brian and Jeff, for this report. Certainly a huge amount of work went into it. A lot of reading on a weekend. Anyway, I got 2 Peter Rowe comments to start off with. On page 309, heading 1.4, it says minimum testing requirements. I think that's supposed to be testing. And the other one on page 408, tree size, it says error reference source not found. I think that was just a computer glitch there, just for stuff. So anyway, 2 quick questions. In regards to the transportation impact studies, do the regional government have basically the same standards as us? And what I'm talking about is, say, the subdivision at the west end of town of Baden. They will have the same basic traffic studies as us. And secondly, I didn't see anything on, I must have missed it, but I didn't see anything on the topsoil thickness that was shown there.
So who wishes to answer that? Mr. Molyneux?
Through you, Mayor. To your first comment about administrative notes and errors. So there are a few in the document, some related to just the general, I guess, process of Word documents. So we are intending to, before it is an officially endorsed document and posted document, we are intending obviously to correct some of those minor administrative errors. In terms of your question about the traffic component and how we would sort of align with the region, I would say that generally speaking, the content of those studies and the requirements of those studies is the same. However, we probably will have different thresholds around specific treatments and installation of treatments as well. And for example, we have obviously a local and collector road functional class, whereas the region will have an arterial function. And so usually you would have quite different traffic volumes on those types of roads. So your thresholds, become a bit different. So I think when you look in our report, there's our requirements, there's a 100 car per day, trip per day threshold that would trigger study. Whereas the region may have a different threshold based on their road classes and their functional class. In the same respect, when they look at some of the treatments that may need to address their traffic issues or their volumes, some of their your study requirements will look around like signal timing and stuff like that, whereas ours will not. So there are a few different aspects to a regional criteria versus a township criteria. But generally speaking, the intent is the same, so that you can determine where, if there are new units coming on board, development units, and there are a substantial amount of additional trips in addition to what the road class can handle, then those would tend to trigger the study needs, regardless of whether it's for a township or a regional road. With respect to your second question about topsoil thickness, I believe there is a section on topsoil thickness. We did receive just prior to the council meeting, there was some comments that were provided by another member of council to the CAO, and were given to staff as well. And so there is component there to topsoil thickness. In addition to that, there were questions about trees. So there's some dialogue that was had, and I kind of put it in my preamble there in terms of consultation and the approach to consultation. We have had some consultation with Let's Tree Wilmot on things like tree species and things like soil thickness, and certainly look gain feedback from the development community as well, in terms of arborists that would work for consultants, or soil folks that would work for consultants, to give us some of that feedback as well. I don't know exactly what section that the soil thickness would be on, or what page it would be on, but I believe it is within the document there.
Thank you. Councillor Hallman.
Hi, Mayor. I see the manager of engineering has his hand up. So just in case he's looking to respond to the last thing, I think maybe I will park my question until he's had a chance to comment.
Just through you, Mayor, following up with Mr. Mollenhouse, for the topsoil thickness, it's in the landscape section, page 127 in the document. It's 450 millimeters for the boulevard thickness, so that's the topsoil thickness that we put in to this document. Hope that addresses your question.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the
Go
mayor.
ahead.
Thank you. So I want to be very clear that I am very impressed with the layers of this. I spent a lot of time with Google and living in your land just a little bit, trying to learn some terminology. So please know that I greatly appreciate this and the details that went into this. And I know Mr. Molyneux got an email from me this weekend about one sign specifically that I've been advocating for some time. So that, just made my weekend a great weekend. But policy is what governs us in municipalities. And it's our only time as council to kind of do that. So because of that, and this being our opportunity, I'm asking council that we defer this till the staff have time to consult with Let's Tree Wilmot. We have declared an environmental emergency. I stand with Let's Tree Wilmot and ask that they have time to provide feedback. I think that it's imperative with our relationship building with the community to create that space for them to be heard in that timeline. I don't see harm in asking for that to happen before the next council meeting and have this brought back. For me, that is imperative, and I'm hoping for council support on that.
Thank you. Mr. Molyneux, you wish to respond to that?
Through you, Mayor, my understanding is that there has been some informal dialogue with Let's Tree Wilmot over the course of the last few years, and specifically on the tree species component and the selection criteria for those tree species. We have had informal dialogue with them, and I would just maybe suggest that if it is the desire of this council to direct us to have additional direct consultation with someone of the broader community, then I would also request direction from council to do a broad community consultation as well. And if that is the case, then you should expect that it will be deferred quite substantially into probably into the summer months. This will not be something that can be done within the next time frame, especially with what I would expect the volume of comments that may be received from the general public. I would also caution on the component of technical qualifications to provide some of the feedback, opening it up to the general public, and that is certainly something council can direct us to do. However, the feedback received may not be of overall value to the process, and certainly that's something this council can decide. But I would not expect this report to come back in any sort of a near time frame. I would note that I did make mention of this document being a living document. And so if this council would prefer that maybe we have further dialogue with a group like Let's Tree Wilmot, then we could look at that following the endorsement of the document. You are not necessarily approving the technical aspects of this document. What you are doing is endorsing the general intent of this document. And so the general intent of this document is to give some clarity to the design and construction industry, as well as to provide for long-term and sustainable infrastructure and protection of the long-term sustainable infrastructure that we have within the township. So if that is the case, then maybe that is something this council could consider, that you give us some direction to work further and to engage them in further discussion. And that could be an option as well, but we would be asking for endorsement of the general intent of the document this evening.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up to that, Councillor Holman?
Yes, thank you through the mayor. Mr. Molyneux, I appreciate that. And so I'm looking at the recommendation. I don't know if you can pull it up, the actual recommendation in the motion. Because I'm hearing what you're saying about the entity, and we can't really change so many technical pieces. So I'm wondering if maybe the CAO can also comment on this. But I'm wondering if we can, within that, specify that piece of talking to Let's Tree Wilmot. Is there a way to modify that, or is staff directive clear enough? I'm just worried that here's policy governs us. Here's an opportunity to further work with Let's Tree Wilmot, and a passion piece that's also for them. I want to ensure that that's provided for them. So is there a way of altering the recommendation within that?
Go ahead, Mr. Molyneux.
Through you, Mayor, I think, understanding, feeling like I understand what your intent is, I guess we could take away the comment from this evening, and I would say that we have provided them with some informal opportunities to comment on the documents, and particularly on tree species. If further dialogue is needed on things like soil, I would caution that without some formal technical qualifications and sort of involvement in this industry, it may be a challenge to gain valuable feedback. But if that is the direction of this council, we can certainly take that away after endorsement and meet with them to discuss further. I'm not sure it necessarily needs to be part of the motion. We can take the intent of what you're describing here and engage with them further. That's fine. Again, I will be asking this council then for some consistency in terms of how we consult with the broader community in terms of these types of things. And if that is the intent of council as well, then I would want some direction there to consult with the broader community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Holland.
Thank you through the mayor. So that is noted, and I appreciate that. I think with one of the things that came out of the strategic plan was that desire for the community to be more engaged. And so I see this as meeting that. I'm hearing you as, the qualified experts in this, that this needs to happen. So I'm trying to find this, trying to find common ground. So I think I'm comfortable with the common ground of you taking this as a directive to really engage with them on the pieces that can be, as you discussed, tree species, if there's a way to meet with that. So I'm comfortable with that, but I would ask that staff follow up with me just so I know that conversation took place, and that I'm happy to endorse that this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm going to echo that I can see this has been a lot of work and absolutely needed. And I did note, I ran a search on the document for the word topsoil. So it was mentioned a whole bunch of times in there in various places. I had asked, I had a question about the threshold. When, I think based on some comments and questions I've had from the public over the years, people, I don't think, understand exactly how many vehicles travel down a road, any given road, in a day. And it could be seen that the threshold of 100 vehicles is a lot. And so that they might feel like that's a little bit of a high threshold. So I'm wondering if you can just give some context to, the number of vehicles that travel down different classes of roads on average, and so people can sort of put this into perspective.
Through you, Mayor. I mentioned before about functional classes of local roads and collector roads, and by and large in the township we have very much a local road network with some collector road types. Your typical volume, a daily volume on a local road, maybe anywhere between 500 and 1,000 cars a day. And then the threshold then would be, between 1,000 and 1,500 cars a day to get to a collector road type status. And those statuses of roads would reflect more or less the volume and the use of the roads. So a local road, obviously you're going to want to, most people are going to want to get to their residence. There's going to be much more driveways and access points. Whereas when the functional class increases to a collector or arterial, then you're limiting some of those access points, because the real intention of those roads is to move traffic, whether it be transportation of vehicles or transportation of active transportation, how that integrates into the network. The threshold of 100 for 100 cars a day, it might seem significant, but the real intent of those numbers is to really get a sense of whether or not the volume is going to impact things like the road class and maybe the road class changing. And it also is intended to focus on things like pinch points of intersections and stuff like that. So the volume is meant to find a balance of, not too high so that it's, doesn't really trigger anything on a local road, and not too low so that it triggers everything. It's meant to meet the balance of the two. But as you can kind of see from those numbers from a local perspective, between 500 and 1,000 cars per day, you're looking at anywhere between 10 and 20% of the volume of that road that you would consider to need maybe further review through a traffic study. Again, I would say that we have to remember it's a living document as well. So if there's something that needs flexibility in the document as we apply it and we learn to apply it over the next little bit, then there may be cases where we adjust that based on engineering principles. So if we do need to lower it in some cases because we know that the functional class is already already at a constraint point, then we would look to do that through the general intent of this document.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
I actually just had a second comment that was following up on some of what Councillor Hallman was saying. I'm wondering if, I think people are going to be interested in the what comes out of the conversation with Let's Tree Wilmot, and in terms of looking for kind of that qualified expert perspective, perhaps we could consult with the GRCA, because they certainly do have that expertise and they're part of our region, and part of the process in a lot of cases anyways. So that might be something to consider for consultation in that particular aspect. And I'd be interested to hear what comes of that conversation as well.
Thank you, Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through the mayor. So Mr. Mullenhouse, did you want to comment back to Councillor Fanning? You look like you were going to, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. I was just going to say we're happy to provide feedback when we do, especially in implementing this this document and gaining feedback from other parties as we go along. We're certainly glad to give that feedback to council directly.
So thank you for that. I just I have kind of three comments and they're sort of all together. So I'm with Councillor Hallman with regards to the Let's Tree Wilmot or someone of significant expertise, because I understand that this is a technical document. And I agree with Mr. Mullenhouse that having every person within the community having a say on something that they probably have I don't know what half of this document means. I went through it and tried to understand, and I did send some questions to Mr. Mullenhouse because I wasn't quite sure of what the wordings were. And having this 300-page roughly document gone over by people that maybe perhaps don't. I think the industry standards that you've set out with the acknowledgements with the people that have been part of the consultation already with the Waterloo Region House Builders Association, et cetera. But perhaps maybe to add to that, if there is two other organizations that might be fitting within the topsoil category and then maybe the tree category, that might fit everybody, because as we've said, we're part of a climate emergency, and having those components maybe added within that, I think might be beneficial. But having the expertise, because this is more of a technical document than something where anybody can sort of have a say on how many cars go in the threshold, and having the public make a demand on our threshold levels for roads isn't really what we want. Further to that, the part of the motion is to give staff the authority to change the document. And I'm only having a question about it because we don't usually have, except for minor changes with our procedure bylaws that the clerk does with like spelling changes and things like that. I have a little bit of concern that if something gets added that technically changes and we're not aware of it as council, I'm just wondering if perhaps maybe that could be amended to say that when a change comes, that at least it comes to council for a read over, like with the red markings to say that there's been a change, as opposed to just being allowed to change it without any kind of conflict. At least council knowing that there's been a significant change when it comes to standards, so that we're aware that if anything does change within that, I think we should be aware of it. And third, Mr. Mullenhouse and I had already had a conversation with regards to this, but being as we are on a path towards reconciliation, I think symbolically, throughout the document, it mentions that other agencies within our community, like the region, GRCA, are consulted. I think as a symbolic gesture towards our working towards reconciliation with the Indigenous community, I still think personally, I would ask that consultation with the Indigenous community. I know it's a regulation, Mr. Mullenhouse, and I understand that that's part of our regulation from the province that we do consult, but I think it would be nice that if the public is aware that the Indigenous community is consulted on some of these matters, that symbolically, I think they should be mentioned in the document. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mullenhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll see if I can remember them all. I tried to write them down there, so just I could offer some feedback. So the first one with respect to circulation to Let's Tree Wilmot and other soil professionals, I did want to make note that through the the regional home builders group, we did consult with arborists and with soil professionals that gave us feedback on the document. So typically we would circulate to the Home Builders Association and their liaison group, and then they would provide comment through a number of their committee members. So there are soil professionals, there are landscape architecture professionals, and those types of individuals who would provide that feedback. So it's not like it hasn't gone through a review process with respect to those technical people. With respect to the delegated authority, one thing that is common with these types of documents is that we set a practice of returning to council to report back some of the information, and it's not done on a as change basis, because we can expect that there will be, especially over the course of this next year, there probably will be some stuff that comes out through processing that, hey, maybe this doesn't actually work, or this applies a bit differently in this circumstance because of certain conditions. And so we would seek to make some of those changes as we go, and then report back through council at sort of a standard interval time frame, as opposed to when changes happen. So in the first year, it may be more beneficial to report back maybe next April, after we've utilized the document for a year, and then we figure out like a 2 to 5 year cycle to return back to council to provide that information. Again, the biggest piece to the changes, and that council should know, is that we would be working with the Home Builders Association and with those groups to work through some of those changes, and with the development community and construction community directly. And we will obviously be engaging them through the course of design and process. So that's something that it does need a bit of flexibility with that respect, away from continued procedural coming back to council type of thing, because it will the use of the document will become very difficult for staff and especially for the development and the construction community. So I would not be recommending that we return back on a change basis, but more so on a more cycle or cyclical process to council. With respect to the consultation to First Nations, we did have this dialogue through email, so certainly glad to provide that feedback here as well. That one thing we want to be very cautious with in terms of this document is that we're not usurping any other provincial regulated processes. And Municipal Class EA is one, the Planning Act is another, and the Drainage Act process as well. So we're not specifically identifying any specific broader consultation. What we are identifying in terms of approvals and permits is the agencies that would be required to give approvals and permits. So I think there's a section there that listed off things like the MOECP. It sections off GRCA and approval requirements through their permitting process. So the way that list is provided is more so just to advise the designer that these may be some things that you are going to have to work through the approval process. With respect to consultation with First Nations, it is a delegated duty of the Crown provided to us through the Municipal Class EA process, and Schedule B and Schedule C projects require the delegated duty to consult. And so on recent projects like Bridge Street Bridge EA and our current Baden Trunk EA, we're obviously going through that process of consultation with First Nations as our delegated duty from the Crown. With respect to other infrastructure projects, I think it will be a very a challenge to set a different process than what's outlined in the regulation in terms of the Municipal Class EA Act. We can certainly add some language there in terms of consultation with other groups as needed, and if First Nations becomes part of that, that language in the document, that's fine. But I would suggest that it be included as needed, because again, back to the broader consultation discussion, we would need some direction from council in terms of what specifically the level of consultation that this council is asking for, because it will change some of the effort of staff and change some of the work that is involved, which is fine if that's the direction of this council, but it should be prepared as a more consistent corporate policy rather than just on infrastructure projects.
So follow up, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll let Mr. Bishop go because I'm just wanting to respond to Mr. Mulhouse. So first, I appreciate all of that, and I understand where you're coming from. So the second part of my comment with regards to council looking at it, I was kind of thinking along the lines of a cyclical nature, like when we get changes that are sort of significant. I'm hoping that I didn't come across that I meant that every time a word got changed or something like that. It was really just the idea that if something came out, then I think annually, if the document was to change, then at least council, I think, should be aware of those changes. When it comes to standards within the regulation standards or provincial standards, that it's just part of what we would get as an update, and similar to what we get with the bylaw, where the color is changed, where there's some yellow or some green or some red for that document change. With regards to the Indigenous component, for me, it really was just to have the acknowledgement there. It's more the idea that I think people don't know that it happens. It's not necessarily that I'm trying to enforce a change in the regulation. That wasn't where I was coming from. It really was to let people know that part of things that happen with regards to roads and infrastructure changes, the Indigenous community is consulted. And that's what I was more getting at, where all of the other agencies are listed because they are consulted as a matter of course. I think it's prudent on us, if nothing, just symbolically as part of our work that we're doing, to at least say that when it's required or when it's needed, the Indigenous community is consulted. And that's where I was coming from on that. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I just wanted to highlight on Jeff's comments there, and more to Councillor Fanning and Councillor Gordick's comments about agency consultation. We did circulate the GRCA on the 3 phases that we sent out, and they did provide a few comments, nothing related to topsoil thickness or species, but we can reach out to them again to see if they have any specific concerns or any comments on that. With regards to updating council, currently engineering staff sit on the Region Spec Committee and OPS, Ontario Provincial Standards Specification, as well as CSA. And some of those standards get updated quite regularly. And if we currently don't update council on those standards with the region and the province that we sit on, those technical aspects. So that's why we presented forward that more of an update, delegated authority to staff to follow that current procedure that we already do. I just want to make that known. Thank you.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just actually one of those comments was what I was thinking about that the Director of Public Works had mentioned. What I'm wondering is if we can look at a more comprehensive policy as being added to a list through the CAO for staff to review, and it involves Indigenous consultation through every department and policy.
Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yes, I would agree that it needs to be looked at on more of a comprehensive basis. And, certainly we have committed to doing a communication strategy as well as a comprehensive community engagement strategy. And this could be incorporated into that. And I think it's very important if we are developing those sort of consultation parameters that we actually involve discussions with the Indigenous community on, what protocol could be developed that is outside of the legislative duty under the Planning Act and the delegated authority by the Crown. So I think there's opportunity for those discussions to occur.
Hey, thank you. Did you have something to follow up with, Mr. Mulhouse? Or?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to note as well, just in terms of updates, we are planning to post this obviously online and have it accessible online. And if you looked at the attachment of the document, there's within the first few pages, there's actually a revisions section up front that sort of speaks to tracking of any sort of revisions that take place over time. And I don't expect that would be, simple administrative updates of, word changes or reference changes to titles and stuff like that. But other than, speaking to, specific technical aspects that need to be changed within the document or have been changed over the course of time. And I would expect this to be a living document, a working document for staff. So we will, obviously have some of those changes come forward, and we will be updating our documentation that is available online to the general broader community. And again, if we work towards a cyclical reporting, we obviously have no issue with that, especially for the first year of the implementation of this document, and speaking to how it works over the next year. No issue with reporting back to council on that, and then providing sort of a more expanded reporting cycle back to council with information. But I just wanted to note that it will be available, obviously, to through online and hard copy as needed. And if anyone did want to sort of get into the nitty gritty of it, they certainly would be welcome to do that through our through the posted document.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. As we're talking about updates and review of it and reporting back, something that occurs to me is a lot of the standards and kind of big policies like this have required review period, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Is that something that would be useful to implement? I mean, you've sort of said, within this first year, but maybe that's part of the conversation to bring back next year, is a recommendation of how frequently this should come to council with larger changes, so that or what types of changes would trigger coming to council with it. Like you said, and I absolutely agree that if there's a technical standard that changes, and unless one of the people sitting around the horseshoe also has that engineer's ring, we're not in a position from an expertise perspective to dictate. So, being aware of things is one thing, and ensuring that we're up to date on what's being done is really important. But yeah, sorry, I'm kind of rambling all over the place, but yeah.
Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. There's a number of technical professionals obviously involved with a document like this, and you mentioned a few, in terms of arborists and those types of folks, soil, folks, civil. We have some electrical components in there, so there's obviously not one expert involved with the extent. This is a very extensive document. There are quite a few different classes of engineering involved and construction involved and things like that. So it is a very comprehensive document in terms of of technical professionals being involved, and certainly that's not something that that this council should take lightly as well. There's many people involved in this process of putting it together and then getting it through community group consultation and that type of thing. So it is quite an extensive list of people involved, and has seen many eyes in process and review. With respect to reporting back, I think there are different philosophies in terms of how that's taken out or rolled out. I believe that it's my opinion that the first year should be something we report back to council on, just to tell you sort of how it's going and what sort of things we discovered through the process. I believe some municipalities don't go through another endorsement process in particular order, and some have one living document and just roll with it type of thing, and then come back if they feel it's needed type of thing. A 5-year time frame isn't unreasonable in my opinion, because that gives a good indication of standards change and best practices change, and there's not a whole lot that tends to change drastically, but there are things that do get updated, and that I mentioned about low impact design before, and that's something that's been in process. Now it's obviously in process at the provincial level, but that is also something that has changed over time. Stormwater management, same thing, that it's been something that's changed over time, and best practices have advanced and moved forward. So I would suggest that, if we're looking at some sort of reporting timeframe, a 5-year timeframe would be probably the most ideal window, so that it's not over reporting and it's not under reporting in terms of the changes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just follow up to say that, I think it is important, the point that's been raised about consultation with the Indigenous community. We know that Indigenous community consultation is legislated in specific areas and very much specifically in your area of work. But as an organization, when we're looking at calling out things that are important to us, I think to include that language might feel redundant sometimes, but I think in order to send a message of what it is we're trying to accomplish, sometimes that a little bit of redundancy serves a better purpose.
Okay, thank you. I think we're done. We can now call the question. We have a mover and a seconder, so all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is correspondence. Have the clerk read the recommendation.
That correspondence items 13.1, 13.2, and 13.3 be received for information.
Okay, that is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fisher. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next are bylaws. Recommendation, please, Madam Clerk.
That bylaw number 2022-19 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council.
Thank you. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Any notice of motions? Seeing none. Announcements. Councillor Hallman.
Thanks through the mayor. I just wanted to thank the community, the New Dundee Board of Trade, and then along with the Sustainability Committee and the Trails Committee for their organizing efforts this weekend. It was great to see everybody out and participating in the community-wide cleanup. I also wanted to share that Colleen and Ted, who own Wheels on Peel, have announced that they are planning to retire in a year. So they are going to be looking to end this summer season. So please support local still with them. And I thank them for their years of service in our community.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, just wanted to report that the Baden Community Association also had a good turnout for our town cleanup. There was 61 registered people come out, a lot of them families with the wee ones. And we collected 44 garbage bags of garbage. And I'd really like to thank Ms. Jackson for all the help she did supplying a lot of the transportation and the equipment, and also Tim Hortons for the refreshments, coffee and Timbits, and it was a really good turnout. So
thank you. Glad to hear. Baden always shows up, as does everybody else. The volunteers in this community are just absolutely fantastic. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the Trails Committee and the Sustainability Committee, and I don't know if Ashton is still on here because as the chair of sustainability. But I want to let the community know that we intend to make this an annual event. And so look for sign up opportunities next year, and we will keep our parks and trails looking great.
Very good. Thank you. See no further. So hopefully that some of you can show up tomorrow at the New Hamburg Community Center, the old barn, for an announcement from the province. There's a couple of announcements occurring, so hopefully some of you can show up. Obviously, Councillor Fisher has declined not getting on the plane to fly west in the morning, so he's already said he's not going to be there. Okay, and no other announcements. So the next item is the confirmatory bylaw. A recommendation, please, Madam Clerk.
That bylaw number 2022-20 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council.
Thank you. That is moved by Councillor Fanning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, Madam Clerk.
That we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor.
And that is moved by Councillor Gordick. Almost didn't get a seconder for that. You guys got a Councillor Fanning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone that showed up to watch and participate. Have a good evening and be safe going home.